So introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
I'm James Jacob Pierri, aka Auset Gypsy, and I am a tarot card reader, fortune teller, tarot rock star, and I'm originally from the mythological city of Hoboken, New Jersey.
So how did Hoboken, New Jersey, where you're from, how did that influence you, and how do you do it?
Where I grew up has a lot to do with the influence of what I do, but it's funny because it's not just a simple straight arrow question and answer about the tarot. It's more about perseverance and spirit. As a kid growing up in the streets of Hoboken, New Jersey in the late 70s and early 80s, those were challenging times. It was not the gentrified, beautiful real estate commodity city that it is now. It was rough and it was tumble, and it was this mix of old school values coming over from Europe. All of our backgrounds in Hoboken are a blend and mix of so many European cultures, from Italian to German, uh, Irish, and then you added in the influx of people coming in from the South, a lot of the Black people from the South, and the Puerto Ricans from the island, Puerto Rico. And then we had a influx of Indians come in from India. And in this mile square, we had a lot going on. But luckily for us, a lot of it was harmonious. I won't say there weren't problems and it was perfect. It wasn't, but it allowed a lot of integration in this 1 mile square. So I got to see cultures at my front door that most people would have to travel long distances to see. And now with my background coming from that old school European, Italian, uh, Adriatic, Mediterranean background and Catholic school, there was, discipline mixed with love. I don't have any bad stories about that. We actually, it was a Franciscan Catholicism. So they were a little more cooler. And especially to deal with a kid like James Jacob Pierri from down by the projects in Hoboken, New Jersey, asking all sorts of questions most kids that age did not ask. And a lot of it had to do with religion and philosophy, because we mixed a lot of religion and philosophy and mythology in my house. It was encouraged to have a very active imagination. So it was a spirit of pioneering people who came to this country to make something of themselves that, still lives inside me. And it took me from the streets of Hoboken, New Jersey, and they were rough then, to out into the world eventually, because I know that I wanted more than that. You had to steer clear of drugs, you had to steer clear of gangs, you had to steer clear of things that could become a trap. And I think that's what influences me more personally about tarot. I could give a whole bunch of answers and reasons that are textbook based, but a lot of other readers have already covered that. My experience is different, and that's what makes Auset Gypsy different. It's the game of life. The tarot is all about choices. It's not about a destination. It's about choices. We all love to be able to predict the future or foresee an outcome of what something will be by looking into the cards. And yeah, that information's there and it's available. How we choose to get there is the more exciting part to me, because it comes down to choices. Like me, I could have easily chose just to stay in that rough and tumble and just accept what the environment offered me. But I renounced all of it. I didn't want it. I wanted more. And I made different choices. And it led to an incredible adventure of life. And everything from our art and our culture and the kindness of the people, and like I said previously, the discipline mixed with love. Nobody got beat. I mean, I can't talk about other kids in their houses, but I had a loving family that really encouraged imagination. And no matter what it was that I did, the tarot, astrology, palmistry, these things were all in the background anyway. They were very cultural. The people believed. And, whether you had an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent that really believed and really did this, or we went to other fortune tellers just to see how they did it, it was just common ground there. So I had this confidence and security with it right next to me, like, believing in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. You just have to believe. And that's what I did. I believed in the tarot. I believed in taking full-on life experience. And trust me, life and fate has thrown plenty of experience at me to confidently do what I do. And that's what I like to deliver to my clients. So where I come from does have a big influence on how I do it. I'm not a new agey reader by any means. I came into that new age world much later in life when I was a late adolescent, early 20s, and I thought it was a little weird, to be honest. I didn't understand all the strange superstitions they had about you can't buy your own tarot deck, someone has to buy it for you, you can't read for yourself. There was a lot of rules all of a sudden with this whole supposedly new age of the dawning of Aquarius, which, being an Aquarius, I equate to lots of liberation and freedom and trial and error, but it came with a lot of that. So I kind of rejected that as well too, and do it a little old school. Sometimes you have to deliver bad news. That's part of life. But then it comes down to the choices. What are you going to choose to do when you get the bad news or the good news? And which best foot are you going to put forward? So coming from that kind of background and the ever-changing landscape, Hoboken, New Jersey is in the shadow of New York City. We have front row center. The only thing dividing us is the Hudson River from Manhattan. So Manhattan being my backyard gave me even more experience than my little mile square. Going into the city and seeing all the shapes and sizes and colors and spices of all the people that live on that rock. And, the trials and tribulations that came with that. Look, New York City is not an easy place. You have to compete. You have to have a fire in your spirit. And if you don't, it's going to eat you up and chew you out. And that taught me to be confident as well, too. Even during the times where I thought, maybe I should give up. But at that time and going through the streets of New York and the experiences of New York City, there really was no option to give up. You had to move forward. So I took this ball and I ran with it. And that's how back home influenced where I am today with Auset Gypsy and how I read as a tarot card